open. Yes, should be good. Perfect. So first of all, welcome. My name is Signe Stige, and I'm the mid-career counselor now of Spiristad, and I'm a professor in clinical psychology at the University of Bergen in Norway. And I'm so delighted that Adrián and Katrine has agreed to contribute today. Both of them, okay, captions enable, yeah. Both Katrine and Adrián, they are very passionate about how we can improve clinical training. And they have developed very innovative, but also very different ways of doing so. So that's why we are so lucky that they have agreed to both talk in this same event. And I have given them quite the challenge because I've given them just a little bit of time because I want to ensure that we get to hear their very different ways of narrowing this theory-practice gap while giving us time to actually discuss and exchange experiences of how we do that in our different contexts. So Adrián Montesano, he's a professor at the Open University of Catalonia, and he will present Practice, which is a project that explores how generative AI can support the development of therapeutic skills through interaction with simulated clients. Katrine Høyer Holgersen, she is an associate professor at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, and she will present an apprenticeship model and how this model can be integrated with problem-based learning to enhance clinical training. So as you know, we had a very exciting webinar in March with Anna Berning, who presented the DEEP project, and this was very inspiring. And today it's the second webinar that is a very different kind of format. So this is the first time we try this format, so we are excited to see how you find it and like it. So Katrine and Adrián will both have quite short presentations, and then we will divide into smaller groups in breakout rooms to have the opportunity to discuss the presentations and exchange experiences, how we work on narrowing the theory-practice gap in our own context, because this is a challenge for all clinical training. And I think we're working on this, like everyone is recognizing this problem and working on it. And when we were in Krakow, we had a really big turn up at the intersection meeting. And also in the survey that we had this autumn, people said really like clearly that they want to have the opportunity to listen and learn from each other and exchange experiences, how we work in our different programs. So that's why this we tried this new format. And I hope you will enjoy it. And I don't think it's going to be any more delay now. I think I'm going to give the word to you, Adrián. It's going to have the first presentation. And I hope it should be possible for you to share your screen now. And,
okay. Yeah. Can you please confirm that you are watching my screen? Everything all right? Okay. So thank you very much for this opportunity. It's an honor for me to be part of this webinar in which I will be sharing my experience with an AI-based simulator for psychotherapy training. The emergence of generative AI with its mastery of natural language, conversational context, and contextual understanding has opened new possibilities for psychotherapy that I would say that is still waiting to be fully unlocked. Most of the applications right now, the chatbots, are addressed to perform as psychotherapists. I'm not interested on that. In my case, I've been interested in using generative AI, for therapist training, and its promise for the development of a new standard in clinical training. The truth is that it doesn't matter if you are pro AI or against AI, we cannot deny that AI is not just a rule breaker, but a game changer, in as much as it has changed the way we process the information, the way we think, we take decisions, we write, we relate, and of course, it has changed the way we learn. In the field of psychotherapy, the person who has best envisioned the promise of this emerging technology has been Professor Siegel, which I read a recent commentary, very interesting. And by the way, from which I have borrowed the following vignettes. She claims that the simulators that we are deploying right now can have an impact at three levels. First, they are helping us to accumulate like flying hours like never before. So through interaction with virtual clients, simulating different clinical scenarios and personalities and so on, we can improve ourselves before moving on to working with real clients. But if we project a little further, we see that this doesn't stop here, because at a second level, with a slightly more advanced simulation system, we can have a specialized feedback agent that somehow can work as our memory, as our data source, allowing us to supervise our performance with teachers or supervisors, and in any way going beyond the current supervision system that is mainly based on written reports or on the student's selective memory or on video recordings at best. But even further, at a third level, with one more layer of personalization and intelligence, we can reach a continuous longitudinal system one that goes with you through different stages of your professional development and can become your faithful travel companion. Why not? Just one day a computer arrives to your hands, or an internet connection was in your computer, and now they are your inseparable allies. Well, this is the premise, but I want to make clear that I'm not coming from a techno-solutionist perspective. Rather, our interest is to put this new technology to the test and to see what they are actually capable of and where the bottlenecks are. So, in a couple of recent studies, we have identified two main challenges that need to be resolved before we can fully enjoy the promise of Gen AI. On the one hand, while AI systems in general master language and conversation, and even they can portray very good a clinical case with the symptoms and so on, they fall short when it comes to simulating the relational dynamics of psychotherapy, especially the more complex ones that are the ones that our students most need to train, such as this kind of interpersonal challenging situation. The truth is that all AI systems have in their DNA the drive to make the conversations productive. And that is something you cannot simply override with a prompt. And as a result, the current virtual clients generate conversations that don't train our trainees for the kind of conversations they need. For instance, the therapeutic alliance is created instantly and even is repaired with minimum relational work, because virtual clients have no relational memory the way we do. We have to provide them with something similar. Virtual clients are also too psychologically literate, too organized. Change occurs in a linear way, and we all know that this is not how it actually works within a single session. I'm not talking about the whole process, that's not the target of simulations. We are just simulating challenging situations, pieces of the process. Okay. So solving this will enable us to create agents with the ability to pose realistic interpersonal challenges with controlled levels of difficulty. Okay, the second challenge is for AI to be able to generate feedback that is clinically valid. Many training chatbots don't have feedback, And if they do, it hasn't been researched. At best, its validity has been assessed through trainees' report, but not against independent expert judgment. And this is a big pitfall, I would say. And another thing is that most of the chatbots, they are using commercial LLMs, OpenAI and all that, and which is all right. But the problem is that you lose your, you are not able, you are not allowed for traceability of the decisions that it's making, for the feedback, for the challenging situation and so on. So it's a black box that you cannot open, you cannot audit, you cannot intervene on it. And of course, solving this problem is critical to reach this new training and supervision paradigm with ethical training at scale, longitudinal learning tools, and so on. Okay, so what does our simulator look like? We have spent the last 1 year and a half, 2 years developing practice, which is specialized in the training of interpersonal clinical skills from a common factors perspective. We have also some modules for training specific skills like systemic interviewing and so on, but mainly it's focused on facilitative interpersonal skills. We have two modes of interaction. One is chat-based, like you can see on your screen, as any other AI chat. And you choose the case, and then you start interacting right away. And we have also one mode that is based on virtual reality. So we are under development of this version, and because we want to make it more immersive, and so we will be able to train also other aspects of communication that has not to do with the text, non-verbal communication, and so on. So here you have an avatar of myself, and it's going to therapy with another avatar. This is it's my future self avatar. So I kind of doing therapy to myself here. It was just a small clip that I recorded this morning just to show you the tool. Okay, but all the thing that I'm going to talk today is about the chat-based format, okay? So it was born from a teaching need. I was struggling to find the best active learning methodology for clinical skills training, since I'm working in an online university context, and so role-playing is very limited in my case. And what started as a local pedagogical challenge has grown into a bigger research program right now. And we are using what is called like rack architecture. That means that we've got a master prompt, but also we've got some documents like a structured case files and a knowledge base with a lot of things that we want the LLM to base on for their performance. And these layers work together to control role consistency, the conversational dynamics, and the content of the feedback. Okay, so for doing that, we have developed this behavioral modeling of LLMs. So the simulated client is not static. We have 5 dimensions and a gating model to fight against this overcompliance tendency of LLM that has nothing to do with psychotherapy. And all these dimensions, behavioral dimensions, are updated turn by turn, depending on the trainee's moves. So we can have this dyadic perspective. So client and therapists are influencing each other. We are trying that. Another feature is that you can have a feedback. You can get a feedback from the tool about your performance on demand. So we have drawn on all the criteria for good kind of feedback in psychotherapy, like behavior focus, a good balance between strengths and pointing areas for improvement, actionable steps, and so on. So students can, the system can support deliberate practice and self-regulated training. This is the idea. And right now, we are currently under development to the next version, the 2.0, with a more complex architecture and multi-agent with specialized edges for the different tasks. So yeah, this is the tool we are using, and we have been researching a little bit on the impact of the simulator in 4 main levels. So how this theory practice gap can be bridged. So first, we wanted to see if practice has the ability to improve trainees' self-efficacy. So with the sample from the last semester that we have been collecting data from 248 trainees, the results are consistent with what is already known. Self-efficacy improves significantly with simulations. In this case, with a large effect size, but it's not always like that. And it seems that students, despite the limitations of the chat-based format, it's just a chat, they really engage with the simulation. This is a phenomenon that is happening in the same way that you engage with a game in your phone, the Candy Crush, so to speak, or a good book if you are a reader. So looking into the qualitative responses, we realized that they appreciate being able to practice in a realistic environment, but without consequences for anyone. And that's a big point here. And another thing that came up from the interviews, which is even, I will say, more important, is that they were appreciating the privacy, the intimacy that they are having with this simulator. So this allows them to deploy their professional identity without the fear of being watched or exposed. Which maybe is a necessary step to be watched and exposed. But I think this kind of simulator is filling one gap, is covering one need that trainees has, and they couldn't do it that way before. Of course, we are interested in analyzing personal trajectories, not only the group, and not only for research, but as a way of providing the platform with a smarter and more tailored system for the trainees. We are far from that, though. Anyway, we have also asked trainees how useful the simulator is compared to traditional role-playing, and the results have been surprising. We were not expecting such a huge difference. So we are not putting the simulator against role-playing. I think they both have to coexist. The simulators are not a standalone kind of training. It's just a complement, okay? It's an add-on, of course. But so to make sense of this data, we could think of this as part of comfort. So it's 24/7. You can do it at your own pace, at your home, maybe in pajama, and this is very handy. But reading the qualitative responses, it became clear that they valued something else: the possibility of endless repetition. And the AIs, they don't get tired of you. That's the advantages. So what they have told us is that this repetition allowed them to automatize their knowledge. So somehow they were gaining fluency. They were feeling that they were getting better session after session. And I think this is a very good experience to have, feeling yourself like performing better every time. In fact, in our course, in our subject, we were asking them to have 6 interactions in 6 days of 6 sections of training, and they are asking us if they can continue, if they can do more, and so on. So I think this is a good news. We have also researched the pedagogical value of some of these simulators features. We have 10 variables that we have asked them to better understand the learning experience. Overall, trainees rate the tool as positive, and particularly they are highlighting its ease of use and their intention to use it as a regular training method. Okay, and we have also good scores in key variables like credibility or personalization. However, we continue to obtain low scores on two key variables. These are the ability to generate an interpersonal challenge that feels real and the level of emotional involvement during the experience. They are still low, and I guess all of you will agree with me on that. These variables are very important for the learning process, and that's why we are currently developing this 2.0 version, or one of the reasons why. Um, okay. Finally, we have also studied this critical question. Can an AI provide clinical supervisory feedback of quality? And I know this is perhaps the most delicate topic of all, given multiple implications from a professional or ethical point of view. But in any case, what is important to say is that the goal of the feedback is not to replace the supervisor or the teacher, nor does it have an evaluative character. Rather, this feedback is developmental, is oriented towards the scaffolding of the skills, of techniques, and is a material that you can use with your teacher or supervisor. So this is the standpoint. And of course, you need a solid rack system. This is critical. This is what makes it work, really. So when we ask students, the answer is clear. They all really appreciate the feedback they receive and even consider it a lever for learning. Delving into the qualitative answers, they value the most the immediacy to get the feedback right after their intervention so they can integrate in the experience. But they were also valuing the content of the feedback. And our feeling is that they were taking the feedback as the truth. And of course, this carries a great deal of responsibility for us. We need to study the quality of this feedback with surgical precision. So, in a specific study, we've conducted an expert panel to evaluate whether the feedback provided was clinically justified relative to the students' performance in the simulation. Okay, so what we said, we analyzed 21 feedbacks, and when looking at the sentence level, almost 90% were well-rounded in clinical knowledge. But still, there is a 10% that were not, and that is not a small number for us in this situation. The picture is even more concerning when we look at complete feedbacks, and just over half of the feedbacks contain at least one sentence that was not fully justified or was unclear or ascertained, and that is a lot. That's a lot. There is a significant room for improvement and optimization here. That said, we also analyzed the content of these unjustified sentences, and we found that most were small hallucinations or attribution errors, like confusion about who said what at what moment. And none of these sentences were reinforcing inappropriate practice. This is important to say. Nevertheless, a potential risk remains, and it needs to be addressed. The system needs to work at 100% and a little bit more. So mostly grounded, but occasionally risky, I would say. So in the light of the results and how the experience has unfolded, we need investment, personal, economic, institutional, maybe, to participate in and maybe even lead the construction of this new standard in professional skill training that has come to stay. There is a remaining question here. We are still working on it. If whether this kind of simulation, this kind of training, translate into actual skill competence acquisition. This remains to be addressed yet. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Adrián, for this really interesting presentation. It's always so lovely to hear your work. You're so dedicated and you work so systematically, which is really inspiring because not only you try innovative ways of bridging this gap, but you also very systematically research it, which I think is really important. So I will open the floor for a few questions now for Adrián before we move on to Katrine's presentation, and then you will have a lot of time to discuss and reflect in the breakout rooms, and then we will gather also in a plenary at the end. But if there is like a few questions now for Adrián, then I open the floor. Looks like everything is so clear, Adrián. And then it will be opportunities also at the end of the webinar. Then I will stop recording if I manage there.